All right. Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to today's edition of Bible News Radio. I am so glad that you are out there, and I want to welcome all of our new subscribers to the show. And if you haven't yet subscribed and you just stumbled upon Bible News Radio, feel free to hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. Today, I actually pre-recorded an interview for this week's show. The founder of Pickleball Rocks. It's the world's most recognized clothing brand in the world of pickleball. And the founder, Rodney Rocket, he goes by Rocket, Grubbs, was my guest this week. And so we are going to roll that for you, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. Hey, everybody. I want to thank you for watching our show today. And especially, this interview that I'm doing today with Rodney Grubbs is great. He's known as Rocket, so I'm going to call him Rocket during the interview. But those of you who have watched our show know I just love pickleball, and I always say pickleball rocks, right? It does. How can you not say that, right? Especially if you're a pickleball player. Anyway, I met Rocket through Stephanie Lane, who is one of his brand ambassadors, and who also endorsed my book, Pickleball Faith, this past year. And so today we're going to talk to Rocket about pickleball and his brand, and just kind of learn a little bit about this man of faith. So I want to welcome you to the show. Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks, Stacy. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's so cool. I'm tickled you're here. I mean, I really am. Everybody that watches this show, 6 years ago, I started blabbing about pickleball, and people are like, what's pickleball? Everywhere I go, people go, you're the first person I heard about pickleball from, but apparently you've learned about it way before me. So tell me about your journey.
Okay, well, interesting journey. Okay, pickleball has been really, really good to our family. And of course, as you know, I am a strong believer, that God kind of puts things in your path out there, and you get to walk down that path. And 13 years ago, as the story goes, I live in a little country town, by the way. It's only 2,500 people. It's Brookville, Indiana, about 35 miles outside of Cincinnati. So we're down the southeast corner of Indiana. 13 years ago, two retired couples that live here in Brookville wintered down in Florida and found this crazy thing called pickleball, and they brought it back to our little country town. Okay, they bought a portable net, and they brought some paddles back, and they were bound and determined they were going to get the sport of pickleball going in our little country farm town here. Okay, I always describe Brookville to everybody as like living in Mayberry. Okay. Everybody knows everybody. You go to the barber shop to get your news, that type of thing. And so when they came back, bound and determined to get pickleball going, they did get a few people playing on a temporary net for a little bit. And when they got a few people playing, then they decided to kick in a little money and throw a couple little spaghetti suppers and raise a little bit of funds. And they built two really nice outdoor courts here in Brookville. I guess I should let everybody know this, that 13 years ago, when when those two couples got those two courts built, there were no pickleball courts in Cincinnati, Ohio. There were no courts in Dayton, Ohio. There were no courts in Indianapolis, Indiana. Brookville essentially ended up becoming the little seed here that got all of those cities eventually started. But back to the story on how I got started then. After they got those two courts built, they came to me one day and said, Rodney, you need to try pickleball. And of course, when you live in Mayberry, if somebody asks you to try something, you try it. And so I tried it. I fell in love with it instantly, okay, as a lot of people do. And started playing it regularly right away. And in my particular case, I, at that time, had a corporate career, but I also was the local high school tennis coach. Okay. I was the assistant coach there at Franklin County High School. And when you're the tennis coach in Brookville, Indiana, everybody knows you, okay? Everybody's friends with you because their kids have played for you, or their grandkids have played for you or something. So eventually, the two couples that got pickleball started came to me and said, Rodney, now that you're hooked, now that we've hooked you, we would like for you to be in charge of getting people playing. Okay. We built the courts. We went to the effort to do that, but we know that you know everybody, and everybody we think will be more receptive to playing if you ask them. So I said, okay, I'll start asking a few friends around Brookville. And so I did. I started asking some friends around Brookville to try pickleball. And of course, they had the same reaction that I had. What in the world is pickleball? As soon as you mentioned it to them.
Right.
And so at that time, I had a small marketing consulting company that I was running kind of on the side of my corporate career. And I had a partner in that marketing consulting company. And one day she and I sat down and I asked her to come to this meeting with some ideas. And I said, the ideas that I want, that I'm looking for is I would like to have a phrase of some type that I could put on a shirt that I could run around Brookville, Indiana with to start the conversation about pickleball. And so literally she and I sat down in my office that day. We put up a whiteboard and started putting ideas for a phrase on the board. To this day, I still don't recall what the first phrase was. It was probably something like, I love pickleball or something simple like that. Yeah. But the second phrase that was written on the board, and it was one that I brought to the meeting, was pickleball rocks. And as soon as I wrote that up on the whiteboard, my partner, Jen, said, well, that's really catchy. She said, that's probably what you ought to go with right there. She said, that'll get people asking questions about pickleball. And so what I did is I went to the local dollar store and I bought a cotton T-shirt. I bought some iron-on letters and I ironed on the words pickleball rocks that day. And it was for no other reason than to just wear it around Mayberry and get people asking me about that word pickleball. And sure enough, it worked. As I started wearing that around Brookville, people were like, Rodney, what's that all about? I never heard of that. Mm-hmm. You need to come try it. Okay. You need to come try it. So I used that little cotton T-shirt to get a few people playing pickleball in Brookville, Indiana. About 3 months after I picked up a pickleball paddle, I was a very competitive tennis player at that time. And, I wanted to see what competition was like in the world of pickleball. And so I signed up to play in my very first tournament. I found one. There weren't very many tournaments back in those days, 13 years ago, but I found one over in Terre Haute, Indiana. Terre Haute had pickleball going for a couple years there. I think they might have had 6 courts at an outdoor park at that time. And I played in my first tournament there, and the only pickleball shirt that I had was that little cotton shirt that I had ironed the letters on, so I wore that. And I'll be darned if people at that tournament didn't start coming up to me and say, I'm trying to get pickleball started in my community. Where did you get that shirt? Well, I'll iron you one, I reckon. Okay, if you want one. So I literally started, ironing a few shirts. People started asking me for that shirt as I started going to little tournaments that I could find. And, that's eventually the little light bulb came on in my head that maybe I ought to print a few of these up ahead of time. Okay. Maybe I could sell enough of them to make back my entry fee for the tournament, which back in those days was $20 probably.
Sure.
And so, that light bulb came on. I started kind of using pickleball rocks as my hobby money then to pay for my pickleball addiction. And from there, about 3 years into my pickleball career, pickleball just all of a sudden absolutely exploded across the country. Up until that point in time, and pickleball's been around since 1965. So it had been around for quite some time, but literally it was about 10, 11 years ago. All of a sudden you could just start to feel it take off. Every state that you went to, you found somebody that knew what the word pickleball meant. You started to find courts popping up all over the place. And so my journey then was to reach out to my 2 sons. They would have been in their late 20s maybe at that time. And my wife and I took them to dinner one night. And just out of that simple dinner, it was just to plant a seed with them about pickleball. They were pickleball players by that time, and they were really good pickleball players, really good 5.0 pickleball players at that time. But we took them to dinner that night with their wives and just told them that, here's what I feel like pickleball, the sport, is doing right now. And people around the country are starting to recognize the Pickleball Rocks brand name.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I don't know if you've ever thought about being in business for yourself, but if you ever get the itch that you'd like to be, I'd be more than happy to have you guys, working with me. And so, as our story goes, it was literally almost the next day I get a call from the youngest son. He would have been, I don't know, 26, 27 years old at that time. He calls up the next day and says, Dad, I'm in. And I said, what do you mean you're in? He said, well, Amy, his wife, and I talked it over last night, and we might never have a chance to get in on the ground floor of something like this again. Get in at the very beginning of the growth of pickleball. He said, this could be fun. So he said, I give my 2 weeks notice to my boss. Okay. Well, Zach was a licensed financial planner for PNC Bank Corporation at the time. I really kind of thought he had his career, set. But he dropped that career like a rock and said, Dad, I'm in. And he did. He came in in both feet. Okay. And about a month later, then his brother, quit his job and said, if Zach's going to do it, I'm going to do it too. So my two sons came on, just a little over 10 years ago. And we have been out there on the trail building the Pickleball Rocks brand now and helping the sport of pickleball grow across the country everywhere that we can touch. We've been doing that for about 10 years now with them on board. So that's my journey so far, Stacey.
That is so cool. Well, first of all, it tells me a couple things, right? Number one, you never you never know what idea is going to just explode, number one. But that family connection, I'm a retired marriage and family therapist. So the very fact that your children want to do business with you mm-hmm. actually says a lot about you as a dad. It touches me because it's like, yeah, there's that your kids want to work with you. I just think that's so cool. And, I'm an old tennis player too. I played tennis in high school and, up until 2009 when I won my first tournament and my last tournament, I quit after that. But that's so cool. So, okay. So I came to know you through Stephanie Lane, right? And how did you get to know Stephanie? Because I want to read you something about Stephanie and you. But how did you know Stephanie?
Okay, well, I'll share that with you, but I'm going to make a point before we go on because I know everybody on here basically is believers and believe the way that you and I do. And my corporate career was with AT&T. Okay, and when I left there back in 2003. I had this dream that had been planted in me for a long, long time that I eventually wanted to be in business for myself someday. When I left AT&T, and I would love to have a business that I could do with my two sons. So that dream had been festering in me for a long, long time. And so never did I ever dream that I'd be in business with my sons in something called pickleball.
Right.
That wasn't part of the dream. It was just, I want to be in business with my sons. And so that's where I say, God just kind of took me down this very strange path and brought these two retired couples, with pickleball back to Brookville. And here I am today now in business with my sons, which was always my dream, happens to be in pickleball. So anyhow, how did I meet Stephanie? Stephanie through pickleball. Okay. I believe the first time that I ran into Stephanie, and as you know, Stacey, and anybody on here that's ever met Stephanie Lane, you fall in love with Stephanie the first time you meet her. There's never any, I don't know about this person, whether I like him, whether I don't like him, I might avoid him next time I see him, that type of thing. When you run into Stephanie Lane, you leave knowing that you're going to want to know her and be around her for the rest of your life. Okay, she's just that type of Christian woman. Okay, and I met her, and she'd have to back me up on this story, but I believe it was in Terre Haute, Indiana, again, where I played my very first tournament, and it wasn't at my first tournament. It was probably, 5 or 6 years later. But I played a tournament in Terre Haute, Indiana. I believe it was an indoor tournament at Indiana State University, and I think that's where I ran into two ladies by the name of Stephanie Lane, and Nicole Hobson was her best friend. And they were always playing pickleball tournaments together at that time. And both of them just really, really great ladies. And so, that's where I got my first impression of Stephanie. And then, if you're in the pickleball world, as I was, Stephanie was very much immersed in tournaments, loved to play tournaments, always very competitive. And so she ran in a lot of the same tournament circles that I did. So I would run into her quite often, and we would always talk and talk. And we'd always talk about family. How's the family doing, and the things that are important to us. And just I just kind of grew and grew and grew with how much I love Stephanie Lane. As we went along. And
Yeah.
so it's been, I don't know. Again, she'd have to back me up on the story, but maybe 6 years ago,
Yeah.
we had a spot in our company that kind of needed somebody to fill that spot, and so we reached out to her, and she came on to the Pickleball Rocks team about 6 years ago, and has been with us ever since. Just the best teammate that we ever could have had.
That is so cool. Well, I will tell you, I met her at the rec center where I play, and I didn't know who she was. Everybody else did, but I had no clue who she was. It just so happened to be my 49th birthday. And she came over and played a game with me, and I just remember she was just so nice. And I didn't, there was like I didn't know who she was, right? It wasn't until afterwards I found out who she was, and I connected with her I forgot how, through text message or something, I don't know. But I asked her about 4 years ago, I said, would you endorse my book when it comes out? And she said, I'll read it. And yes, I'll endorse it. Without reading it, she actually said she'd endorse it. But it's so funny because it took me 4 years to write it and get it out. And then when she read it, she loved it. And, and all that. So that's how we became friends, just because, she told me, oh my gosh, do you have any idea how many Christians are in pickleball? And I'm like, this isn't my goal wasn't to evangelize the pickleball community. This is a book about my walk with the Lord and how he's corrected me, basically. It's like, so I understand what you're saying. It's like this weird thing that how God works in your life. It's like, I wouldn't have expected it to be pickleball either. But because of that, I want to read you this quote I got. Hope you're enjoying our interview with the founder of Pickleball Rocks. Now I want to tell you a little bit about my book, Pickleball Faith, Inspiration on and Off the Court. Don't forget that part, inspiration on and off the court. We have been so blessed. We have so many cool testimonies of people reading this book and the Lord using it to change their attitude and encourage them. And so I wanted to let you know, if you want to get a copy from me here, all you got to do is go to BibleNewsRadio.com or pickleballfaith.com. It's the same website. You can go there, click on the Pickleball Faith tab, and then it will take you right through where you can order the book. You can get it autographed, or you don't have to get it autographed. Either, whatever you want is good. And also, if you are somebody who watches our show all of the time and you'd like our work, and then I want to welcome you and invite you to donate to the show and our nonprofit Heart Tug International, which is the overseas ministry of Bible News Radio. And thank you to those of you who already do. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the interview. I want to read you this quote I got today from the pickleball librarian, Andrew. He wrote, congratulations to Stephanie Chouse Lane and Rodney Grubbs for receiving the Pickleball Librarian Spirit of Pickleball Virtual Award. So you won this. They are amazing people on and off the court. Mark my words, these two will eventually become part of the Pickleball Hall of Fame.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
It reminds me of Proverbs 27:2, which says, let another man praise you, a stranger, and not your own lips. Yeah. So, now if somebody wants, to get a Pickleball Rock shirt or anything else, like what else do you do besides pickleball? I've heard that you do a lot more than just your Pickleball Rock shirt, but I have no idea. But I know you're all over the place. So,
well, pickleballrocks.com isn't a shirt selling website. it's, I'll call it our corporate website, which describes all the different programs that we have developed over the years. And literally everything that we do has always been about helping somehow grow the sport. Whether it's going into a little community that doesn't have a pickleball court yet and showing them, what pickleball looks like with a portable net, or whether it's doing, big clinics where we come into towns and we'll do, a couple days of teaching, big clinics, and at any level. We can teach at the beginner level all the way up to the top levels, because we've all been top level players in our company. We have programs, for helping schools and PE programs.
Nice.
Get going, so get more of the kids playing. We've got those things in place. Several, we're all the time looking for good. I guess they're all good, but philanthropic type of projects to do. One of the most recent projects that we did was, it was during the pandemic, and I happened to catch a Facebook post one day from a gentleman who I had met a couple years prior, and the gentleman plays from a wheelchair. Okay, he had a very unfortunate situation where he used to be a good pickleball player, but ended up in a wheelchair, and so decided to play pickleball from a wheelchair. And one day I happened to catch a Facebook post from him, and it said, so happy that I've been able to raise enough money to buy a sports wheelchair to give to another pickleball player, so we could get another paraplegic pickleball player playing pickleball. That post has really, really touched me. And so I took a few minutes. I sat down in front of a graphics package and put together a little mock-up of a T-shirt. And on the T-shirt, it said, "Let's roll pickleball." Okay, and it had a little logo to go with it. And I just stuck that on a white T-shirt and sent him a picture of that on social media, and just said, "Hey, I don't know. I need your opinion on this." Said, "Do you think this type of shirt would sell?" And he came back immediately and said, "I love that. As a wheelchair player, the Let's Roll logo on my shirts." He said, "I would love that." He said, "I know I can help you spread the word on that." And so out of that, Stacy, then what we did was started selling that shirt online. We did some long sleeves, some short sleeves, some hats. And every time we sell a Let's Roll pickleball item of any type, we give a percentage of that then back to him specifically to buy sports wheelchairs, so we can get more people playing pickleball out there in the paraplegic world. And so those type of things, those are described on our website. So when people go to pickleballrocks.com, they'll start to see some of those type of programs out there. We're just very fortunate that, our whole family and everybody on our whole team all has the same philosophy. We really don't kind of look at ourselves as a clothing business. We look at ourselves as a people and a pickleball business. And by the way, people happen to buy shirts from us too.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, that's always been our mission, is just to help the sport grow in some small way. And if we do that, God will take care of the rest.
Are you humored by how big this has gotten with like celebrities and stuff?
When you say am I humored?
Well, my editor told me I used the word humored wrong because I used it in my book a few times, but it doesn't give you joy. I guess that's a good question. Just to see like, oh, it's about time you figured this out.
It is interesting because we're seeing upper level athletes in different sports, very, very well known athletes now playing pickleball, in their spare time, and we're seeing Hollywood stars out there building pickleball courts in their backyards so they can have their friends play pickleball. And to me, again, I'm an old marketing guy. That's great. That's great exposure for the sport. Okay. Because people just see the sport being played. A lot of those people do have large followings that if they eat an apple today, well, 1 million people are going to eat an apple tomorrow because so-and-so did it. So maybe 1 million people go try to play pickleball because they saw, somebody that they recognize from TV, movies, athletic endeavors. They do it. So to me, it's all really, really good for the sport kind of like our new pro tours. We have 2 new professional pickleball tours out there right now. Is the average player ever going to be able to play at that level? No, but those guys are getting a lot of press right now and a lot of exposure. And, all of that to me is good for the overall growth of the sport of pickleball. And, if you know our mission is to grow the sport, and we know that a big percentage of those people that come into the sport somehow magically find us and end up, buying a piece of apparel or buying something with our brand on it at some point in time. Just like that happened. Yes. Yeah.
So, okay. I know I got to wrap this up, but I wanted to, first of all, I want to tell you, I had the opportunity to interview Coach Lou Holtz many years ago. Mm-hmm. And I was super excited to interview him, but I'm totally more excited to interview you over him. You remind me a little bit of him. But how did you get the nickname Rocket? Got to find that out.
Well, okay. The very quick story. That nickname was hung on me by an 8th grade math teacher decades and decades ago. Okay. Used to call me, Rocket Rodney. Okay. And so that nickname was hung on me literally back in late middle school or early high school by that math teacher. When I left school, I kind of lost that nickname. And then something came down and said I should start using that. When I started selling my little t-shirt, I went out and I built a little website. Okay. And the website was called allaboutpickleball.com. It is still out there today. And on that website, I built a little section that said, if you want to know anything about pickleball, ask Rocket. And just had a box there where you could fill in your question, hit return. It went to my email, and I would email them back with the answer to their question. So I don't know. Something just said, Ask Rocket was going to be a cool thing to put on that website, right there next to my Pickleball Rocks, t-shirt that I was trying to sell at the time. So, so what happened then, Stacy, it was probably a good 3 years of that website and lots of people asking me questions and me playing tournaments all over the country at that time. It literally was about 3 years later when the first person out there at a tournament came up to me and said, "Are you Rocket?" They had asked me questions, or they knew somebody that asked me questions, and nobody knew who Rocket was. It was like the behind the scenes Wizard of Oz or whatever. I was behind the curtain. And so it was a long time before anybody even knew who Rodney Grubbs was. It was always Rocket.
That's very cool. Well, I love that. And you know what? Thank you. I know you're busy. So I'm honored you came on our show. And again, everybody, go to pickleballrocks.com. Course. That's what you're going to do. Go there. If you want to get some good stuff, and there's tons of stuff out there. That magnet in the background, you can probably see it. I have one of those on my fridge. So be like me. Get those Rockets. Get Rockets material, the pickleball rocks, and play pickleball, people. Paddle up. That's what we always say, right? All right. Well, there you go, everybody. I don't know if you were as excited as I was to, sit there with Rocket and talk about pickleball and his faith a little bit, but that's what the show is about. And I will tell you that we will be having some future interviews with pickleball players, other people of faith, as we continue to do the show. And of course, we'll always come back and do news and politics and a whole bunch of other stuff. But this week, we want to just focus on pickleball. So I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget, if you're not on my email list, make sure you go over to BibleNewsRadio.com and subscribe to our email list. And again, you can donate, and you can also get our book over there. So go, I guess I want to end the show by telling you this week, go make a difference in somebody's life. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit and pay attention, listen with intention, and maybe you'll see God do something in that person's life, and even more so, maybe he'll be doing something in your life. So until next time.